Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Academy of Insurance's weekly webinar after show. I'm your host, George, and joining us today on the after show is the director of the Academy of Insurance, Mr. Patrick Raitt, and today's instructor, Nicole Limpert. And excuse me, pardon me, frog in my throat. Today's webinar was cyber hygiene and hacking exposures. Nicole, welcome. It's your first webinar with us and your first after show. It's great to see you, and thanks again for a great class today.
Yeah, of course. I'm always happy to help. And I feel like the topic of cyber insurance is very relevant right now. So hopefully it was interesting for the attendees that were able to join in.
There was so much information in the class, but one thing that kind of tied my intro of you to the class was you said that one of the things you do is underwriting new cyber risks. How often do we see new cyber risks coming? Like, are there new styles of threats or kinds of threats a lot, or do they sort of manifest themselves every 6-7 months or so? Like, if you can tell us a little more about new cyber risks and how often they appear.
Yes, yeah. So I would say about every 6 months is when the hacking and the type of hacking nature of it kind of evolves, no pun intended there. But there are a lot of different attacks that hackers can do. And that's actually why, in my opinion, cyber insurance is so different than any other line of coverage, is because the claims are continuously changing, where, on the property side or GL side, it's kind of your standard, claims that are going to occur every single time. But for cyber insurance, it could look completely different. And so that's why you need to make sure that your cyber policy is able to update frequently and adapt to those continuous changes, or else, you could have coverage that's completely outdated that might not actually pick up costs for a hack attack that wasn't, specifically listed within the cyber policy.
Gotcha. No, that makes sense. Patrick, your thoughts on today's class? Super great, packed with information. What do you think?
Yeah, totally full of new information and things I hadn't even thought of. One of the things that I'd learned was that potentially one of the largest payout areas is in business interruption. Nicole, what are you finding is one of the biggest gaps you're seeing when you start looking at a client?
Yeah, in terms of like what they currently have for coverage, or that kind of exposure. Yeah, it really is. It's on the first party side. I would say most businesses nowadays have some sort of cyber insurance coverage in place. But if it's not a standalone policy, you really only have that liability cover included. So that's what those endorsements on like a GL or BOP policy have, is the liability portion, which, as we learned today, is only triggered about 4% of the times when cyber attacks occur. It's not to say that's not important cover, but it's just not a guarantee that someone's going to bring a lawsuit against you every single time a cyber attack occurs. So that's usually the gap, is people will see the word cyber on a piece of paper, they see it on that endorsement, and they assume that all costs are going to be picked up because it's listed there. But they don't have that broad first party coverage, and it ends up leaving the business on the hook for thousands and thousands of dollars, which, if they took a deeper look into the policy language, or maybe explored a standalone option, they could have had that covered.
Yeah, and you just mentioned, and you mentioned it during the class, but it seems like it's very critical for agents and brokers, folks that are selling cyber policies, to really have an understanding of the individual policies that they're selling, isn't it?
Yes, 100%, which is one of the toughest things, I would say, and one of the biggest roadblocks for agents, because every single cyber carrier uses different terminology. They're covering different things. So you really do have to kind of be an expert in this space and understand the policies in order to make sure that your business is being adequately, covered. But that's where I would always suggest to agents to lean on your carrier partners to be that resource for them. Especially, there are a lot of monoline cyber carriers nowadays where cyber is all that they do. So it's a lot easier for a specialist to help out someone that obviously has a lot of other lines of coverage that they need to be an expert in.
Sure. And I was thinking about something that's completely gone out of my mind at this point. Oh, well, George, I'll think about it.
Sure. Well, thank you, Patrick. So I love it when I learn new words. And Nicole, you put a new word into my lexicon, exfiltrate. I thought that was really cool. Not that the exfiltrate, not that exfiltration is cool, but that was a interesting word. You mentioned that you thought that cyber insurance was not going to be priced this low for, like, this is in the lower range of how cyber insurance is going to be priced. Like, why do you think do you think it's going to jump soon, or why do you think there's going to be a spike in the cost of cyber insurance?
So cyber insurance in general has been relatively cheap for a number of years. You know, you could get $1 million in coverage for a couple $100. Obviously, that's not sustainable, especially at the point that we're at, where these attacks have been on the rise for the past year. We're starting to see the market harden, and it really is, you know, kind of a reason, or kind of started with the whole working from home environment, because those low prices were not sustainable. So we have started to see the prices jump. Around 40% is what we're seeing across the market. Granted, you know, they were starting at a very low price point, so it's still relatively inexpensive for businesses, especially with the limits that they're able to purchase. But yeah, I mean, this is just going to continue to be on the rise because the claims are going to continue to increase in both severity and frequency as well.
Understood. Patrick, your final thoughts on today's webinar?
Yeah, so just a couple of thoughts quickly. Nicole, are you seeing mostly E&S in this market right now?
That is where you're going to find the broader policies, purely because they are not subject to all the filing requirements with all of the individual states. The surplus lines markets are able to update their form a lot more frequently, so they're able to keep up with those changing and hack attacks, where some of the admitted markets, because of just those filing requirements, there can be a lag time between 2 to 3 years in terms of the coverages. So yeah, we are seeing most broad policies come out of the surplus market.
And you mentioned a hardening market. Are you seeing underwriting restricting? Are you seeing coverage being reduced?
All of the above. We are seeing coverage being restricted. We are seeing some cyber carriers, or maybe they weren't, specialists within cyber, but they offered a cyber product, actually completely getting out of this space, non-renewing industries, increasing deductibles, increasing premiums, and then also tighter underwriting requirements. I think what initially happened, a lot of people thought that it would be very easy and fun, to get into the cyber space. But if you don't have the adequate underwriting data and you're undercutting a lot of the market out there, it's just obviously going to bust at some point. So a lot of markets did experience that. So they're kind of just getting out of it as a whole. Other carriers are doing it more on an industry by industry basis. So maybe they're just non-renewing a specific industry, but they're still offering their cyber product to, some others out there that are a little bit less exposed, less risky.
Sure. Yeah. And these are the kinds of things we'd expect with emerging risk issues and an evolving market risk, for sure.
Definitely. I do have a question for you guys. Did you go and check if your information was a part of any breaches on that Have I Been Pwned website?
Yes.
Were you a part of any breaches? It's okay if you were.
My phone number did not come up, but my email address did, my personal email.
Yep, we see it happen to just about everyone. You're more of a unicorn if you haven't been a part of any breaches now at this point.
Nicole, thanks again for your time and your help today. And will you ever do an Academy of Insurance webinar again, A? And B, should we wait at least 6 months in case there's a new kind of new content to add, I'll say, to the class?
Yeah, I would be happy to do another Academy. And yes, maybe we'll wait a couple months to avoid some redundancy. Although I will say you can never learn too much about cyber. So there are always more avenues to discover and dive deeper into.
Absolutely, thanks. And you don't need to put any new stuff in the class. I was just, the 6 months.
Right.
Facetiosity on my part. So, Nicole Limpert, our instructor for today, thank you so much again for everything. And Patrick Raitt, our director, on behalf of both of you, this is George, your host, saying thanks, everybody. Take care, and we will see you next time. Have a great day, everybody.
Take care, everybody.
Thanks so much.